Lamy Safari. This is one of those pens that people choose when they are getting serious about fountain pens. Maybe they've played around with Preppy or Pilot Kakuno or other relatively lower budget pens, and they think, yes, maybe this fountain pen hobby is for me. Or maybe they're directly jumping into their first pen being a very, very good pen. And of course, coming at a really good budget. That's when people choose this one. Now, this is also a pen that is preferred by a lot of artists. They surprisingly, a lot of artists for some reason prefer Lamy Safari over a lot of other pens, and that's, by the way, how I also came across Lamy Safari when I was just starting my journey. My wife, who is an artist, actually introduced me to Lamy Safari. Now, just to compare along with Twisby, which is a similar price point pen and kind of in that budget category, and a really, really good pen at that as well. The size is pretty similar, as you can see, not a lot of difference, but when it comes to aesthetics, that's kind of a game changer. This one is a transparent one. Now, minded Safari, or a pen that looks very similar to Safari called Vista, also is in the market. That's a completely transparent pen from Lamy in the same design language. And I've got an Eco T, which I like because it's got this triangular grip, which by default exists on Lamy Safari. And I'll just also compare in terms of thickness. If you can see, I'll compare it against this mechanical pencil. So even on a thickness end, this is a relatively thick pen. Some people don't really like the way this clip looks. It just, for some people, they say this feels crude. I think it does to some extent compared to a lot of other pens, for example, Pelican and those pens, but they are also higher priced pens. But then again, this definitely is a much rugged pen. It's a lightweight pen compared, uh, com when you actually compare it to plastic body or resin body pens versus metal body pens. So I think this is a really well built pen and is quite lightweight. Now, the reason it is lightweight is because on the inside, I'll just also show you how it looks. There's a window that can show you how much ink is left in the pen. On the inside, you get this converter, or you can call it whatever you want to call, cartridge converter. You can Lamy also sells cartridges, so you can also end up using those. I tend to use this because it's very easy to switch inks. Right now, I've got a Waterman Serenity blue ink in this, and the nib. Let me just show you the nib with a close up here. It's a pretty simple nib, not a lot of flash compared to, let's say, the Twisby Eco, which I really, really like this nib. Twisby Eco has got some pizzazz, or rather, the nib has got some pizzazz. Lamy is a very simple nib. It's a steel nib pen. The grip is also a tripod grip, so your hands actually feel really good. This pen surprisingly feels really, really good in your hand when you're writing. And the reason I like Twisby Eco T over Twisby Eco is exactly why this works. And I think the triangular shape on Lamy Safari is more enhanced and it's more triangular than compared to Eco T in that sense. And I think that makes it feel like you're writing with a modern pen or maybe with a modern pencil, because I'm a big fan of those triangular pencils, the yellow ones, and this feels exactly like that. Another thing that I really like about Lamy Safari is when you're writing with this pen, it feels like you're writing with a roller, somewhere in the roller ball to kind of to fountain pen, in somewhere in the middle. So there's some scratchiness that I can feel on the paper, but it's very, very smooth. So it's the scratchiness is enough for me to feel like I'm writing with something. And I'm sure you might have experienced those with like Uniball Air and those kind of pens. If you're writing in non-fountain pens, but then they glide over paper so much, they just feel a little bit unnatural. This one doesn't feel like that. And I've got it in a fine nib, and I think Lamy pens, they tend to run a little bit more wet compared to other pens. So the fine one works actually really well. I don't know. I have tried a medium one, which my wife has. Not a big fan. I think, I'm sure I'm not sure if you can actually hear the sound this nib makes on the paper. And I think for some reason, look, people love gold nib pens, and gold nib pens are, or rather gold nibs are to some extent softer. So when you press hard with those, they tend to widen up a little bit. This one doesn't, which is true for all the steel nib pens. And sometimes I just don't want to pay attention to how soft I am writing. Sometimes I just want to take out my anger on the paper, right? For those for those situations, even like Pelican M200s, which is a steel nib, it still is a much softer nib. But with TWSBI Eco T and with Safari, I can do that. I can be a little bit angry on the paper. I think this works really well. And I just wrote this, and I wrote it pretty hard, as you can see, right? So this works well. I've also got, as I was just saying, let me pull in a Pelican M200 in fine. Yeah, like as I press hard, the nib just flexes a little bit, which doesn't happen with Lamy, which I like. This one has got a Pilot standard blue ink, right? I'll also just compare, and of course this is a very different budget in terms of actual pens, right? This is the TWSBI Eco T with the KWZ Honey. Now TWSBI and these, I can be a little bit rough. I don't have to think about what's going to happen to my nib or what's going to happen to my pen. This is how it looks. And as you can see, the Lamy Safari actually it runs pretty well, but if I would prefer Lamy Safari over a lot of other pens for longer writing sessions. For writing sessions where let's say I've already got my forearm paining, right? I would prefer this just because of that tripod grip and being able to not pay attention to how fast I am writing or how hard I am writing, especially taking notes through a meeting that's running fairly fast or fairly quickly. I wouldn't trust a fountain pen. I tend to take a lot of those kind of notes with a pencil, but I think this one can do really well. Also, as I said, artists really love this one because again, this is a relatively budget pen. You can throw it around in your bag. It's actually, I shouldn't say it's built like a tank. Let's say it's built like a pseudo tank. So it sustains all of the daily wear and tear that you can actually put it through, and the line is pretty consistent. So if you're drawing, if you're let's say working through construction lines, etc., and you're sketching with like ink and watercolor or those kind of things, I think maybe that's one of the big reasons that a lot of artists actually prefer this one. And they've got this one in like, I don't know, maybe thousands of different colors. They've got like yearly editions that they come out with as well. So there's a lot of variety, including Harry Potter editions, for example, right? The Gryffindor edition or Slytherin edition, etc., so on and so forth. So I think there's some potential here in these kind of pens, which are really your daily go-to workhorse kind of pens in a really good budget. I think this is, again, just to sum this video up, it's a relatively underrated pen, and this would very easily be worth more money than they charge for it, actually. Maybe that's the reason this does as well as it does. Not a big fan of the clip personally, as well, as I said, but I think I can overlook that for the comfort and for the fun that I get out of a Lamy Safari. Sometimes I just don't want to write with an expensive pen. I just want to be crazy on paper, and this is the pen that helps me to do that.